Sweats, and this is my partner Nico. Our mentor, Dr. Pamela Loretto, is in the back, and we are from Grand Rapids Community College. Our project is Purple Blue Stripe, the effect that it has on wetland biodiversity. So our project is Purple Blue Stripe and the effect that it has on wetland biodiversity, along with the impact that biocontrol beetles have on Purple Blue Stripe. Purple Blue Stripe is a Eurasian plant species that came to America in about the 1800s. They figured it came out in either ship ballasts or in wool brought over, and then once it got here, the seeds spread quickly over North America, mainly due to it's a very successful invader because it produces large amounts of seeds, up to 2.7 million per year, and has a fast expanding shallow root system along with a taproot, and it outcompetes other plants. Its preferred habitats are mostly wetlands and disturbed areas, mostly any area that has long-standing water and a lot of sunlight. Flossie is someone who has done a lot of research on purple loosestrife and the beetles. You can see an adult beetle right there, which is one of the biocontrol methods. Flossie did the initial research that found out it was species specific to purple loosestrife, which is why it was allowed to come over to North America. And a big part of our project here at Pure Cedar Creek is to see whether it is a successful way to manage purple loosestrife without having a lot of extra management. So here at PCCI, they use 3 different sorts of chemical treatments, along with just cutting stems and seed pods, and then the biocontrol method, which is the beetles. We want to stay away from chemical and mechanical ways because they release more chemicals into the environment, and just by mechanically removing stuff, you're kind of disturbing the wetlands itself. So the beetles are a great way to cut down on cost and labor time. Here you can see some mating Gallericella beetles and plants that are getting eaten by the purple loosestrife that's getting eaten by the beetles. Our objectives are to compare 3 different wetland types: uninvaded wetlands, invaded wetlands that are managed, such as here at PCCI, and heavily invaded areas which are completely unmanaged. We also want to look at wetland characteristics associated with invasion, so we want to check out like the different soil nutrients that differ between sites and soil saturation, whether they've been disturbed a lot. Another part of our project is to measure how effective the beetles are at controlling purple loosestrife, to calculate species diversity using 3 different indices, and identifying natural areas using a floristic quality assessment. And lastly, throughout the summer, we need to map all of the purple loosestrife population on the property using GPS and GIS mapping.
As Jake had mentioned, we're going to look at 3 distinct wetland types. We're going to look at differences in species composition for the plants that are located there. We're also going to look at purple loosestrife and see if it has any sort of preference on being around native or non-native plants, and also if it favors certain environmental conditions. The 3 wetland types that we have are uninvaded, which would contain no purple loosestrife, invaded but managed by Gallericella beetles, and then a heavily invaded unmanaged site. We used a stratified random sampling design where we would go out to a wetland, stand near the edge. We used dice to give us a number on how many paces we would go into the wetland. For anybody that is rolling dice in a wetland, the cabbage leaves make a very great surface for that. So, the grid consisted of 2x4, a total of 8 1-meter square quadrants. We tagged them all with GPS, and there's 2 of these sites per wetland type. The first, the unveited wetland, there's two located on either side of Cloverdale Road near the east entrance of Red Trail. Again, there's no purple loosestrife at these sites. The next two are located, well, they both contain beetles and purple loosestrife, one being south of Brewster Lake, actually near a beetle release site in 2013. And then the other is located south of Cedar Creek and White Trail. The last two were located off-site. We had to actually travel far and wide to find this place. Justin's Marsh, south of Kalamazoo in Portage, Michigan. There's a lot of purple loosestrife here. In our sites, we do not see any beetles or have any beetles at all, so it's mainly loosestrife and some cattail. This is a photo we've taken from the road. You can see all of the last year's dead brown stems of the loosestrife with new growth at the bottom. That sign, they should probably change it to Justin's massive invasive problem, because the farther you go up the road, there's just more loosestrife. I mean, you can see a couple cattails, but it's mostly dominated by this highly invasive plant.
For our spring assessment of Gellercella beetles, we used basically standardized monitoring protocol established by Blasi, who has done most of the research once again on purple loosestrife in the beetles. For fixed count intervals, each of the researchers stands on one side of a quadrant, and you have a minute to count the number of adult beetles, a minute to count the number of larvae, and a minute to count clusters of eggs that are on the plant. As well as that, you assess the percentage of damage that the beetles have done to the plant, the number of stems within each quadrant that are over 20 centimeters, and the percent cover, which is covered by purple loosestrife. Here are just a few more beetles, another loosestrife plant. Right near the arrow, you can see right there, and all along this whole line of whole stem line right there is just filled with all larvae that they just sit there all day basically and just munch on the leaves, and they do a lot of damage. Right near the white arrow, there is a cluster of eggs. There's a few more up on here as well. They're hard to see. The beetles come out and start laying eggs midway through May, and then they will hatch into the larvae that you have been seeing. Site 3, which is south of Brewster Lake, beetles have been released here by PCCI. All the numbers you see right here are all averages within the 8 quadrants within our plot site. Site 4, which is south of White Trail and across Cedar Creek, they have not been known to have been released from that area, and there's quite a bit less adults there, but it's exciting to see that they've been traveling around. We have to do a bit more data collection before we can make any conclusions off of this. This is all baseline data, so someone needs to come back next year or so and gather some more data on it.
Also, to add for the area that's this one here, there was releases of beetles in 2001 and 2003, and it's believed, there's really no way to fully determine, but that the beetles have traveled down the creek along it and started populating and damaging purple loosestrife in that area. For the past couple of weeks, we've been focusing on identifying all the plants in our plots, and so we're creating a inventory list of all of the plant species that are there. We're looking at biodiversity, so we're using several diversity indexes to look at species richness and evenness, and we're going to compare that amongst the 3 wetland types. With a list of all the species, we can do a floristic quality assessment, which identifies natural areas and habitat quality. It also facilitates a clear comparison between natural sites at PCCI. With all of the species data and with the environmental data that we have, we're going to use ordination software or gradient analysis. And what we can do is start to create relationships between the two. If you look over the says invaded, and we start to see species richness and diversity and organic matter all associated with that site. This graph is actually taken from a similar study in Minnesota in 2004. What was interesting is that invaded sites actually had higher diversity, which is what we wouldn't expect with most invasive plants. By the end of our study, with all of our data, we're actually going to have a third somewhere that's going to say heavily invaded, see uninvaded over here, and we'd like to see 3 distinct clumps of data. And also to add, this sort of data, PCCI would be able to use that to predict where purple loosestrife might be attracted to, what native plants. There's going to be native species that will be added in here too, and what type of environmental conditions purple loosestrife is attracted to. Our remaining objectives are to continue mapping purple loosestrife at PCCI using GPS data points and GIS mapping. Shout out to AJ. And also assessment of purple loosestrife performance. We are going to go to each plot and choose the 5 largest stems and count inflorescence and look at all of the petals and measured lengths to see the impact that the Gallericella beetle has on purple loosestrife and if it's working. At the end of the season, we're going to shave all of the plots and dry and weigh all of the plant matter to determine if purple loosestrife has an effect on community shoot biomass. And then, as I previously mentioned, we're going to perform a stat analysis of all of the species data and environmental data. Thank you. I was waiting for you.
I know, right? You can always count on me. How do they know how many of the beetles to release? Is there some kind of a relationship between density of loosestrife and number of beetles that you need to release in order to bring them under control? Or you kind of release a set number and assume that over time they're going to ramp up and hopefully control?
The previous literature by Blasi in the 90s when he was testing this beetle, he had come up he never came up with any definite numbers. It seems that in the past, from everything that we've read, that people are just throwing large amounts of these beetles. I know that in the past at PCCI there's been several thousands that have been released, whereas I believe in 2013 only 200 to 300 or 200 to 500, somewhere in that ballpark, have been released. It seems that it's good that if people are rearing these beetles in captivity and then releasing them, that they do it every now and again. And if beetles do become established at a certain site, it is encouraged to bring them to other sites and encourage them to go to other areas. So to answer your question, it doesn't seem that there's any definite numbers, but the more the better. So especially in an area like Justin's Marsh, that would have, there's just an almost unending amount of purple loosestrife there. And it would probably take years for them to effectively control that, so they'd have to release tens of thousands.
Thanks.
Yes?
Is it always purple?
For the most part, yes. Purple, kind of a crimson sort of color. Very easy to identify, although it is confused with several other plants, but for the most part, it's pretty, just the spike inflorescence is a dead giveaway, so. Yes?
I have a question. Since these aren't native beetles, do you know if birds or anything eats these beetles in nature?
It's a great question. I don't know for sure. I would imagine that maybe if somebody's hungry enough, the bird people, what do they think? I don't know. Should maybe get with them and ask them.
We haven't noticed anything as far as eating them so far.
We haven't seen anything preying on them at all, so very tough to say, but it's something we'll look into. All right, thanks guys.